What's cracking, everybody? Zerfelros here, bringing you some Pokemon Go battling content along with little Maggie here. And we are going to be talking about the Ultra League Premier Cup Classic today. One of my favorite metas, and probably a lot of other people's favorite metas. Now, there's no XLs in this cup, no legendaries or mythicals, and the best part, as we already said, but I got to say it twice because it's great. No XLs. So that's going to be harkening back to the days before XLs even were released. This was one of the best metas, in my opinion. It was just so much fun having Ultra League stuff that wasn't going to be dealing with Giratina or Cresselia. It's a much more fun meta. Now, obviously, there's been some stuff that's been added since we started having Ultra League Premier Cup Classic, there's a lot of things. We'll go over most of them in this video. But, there's things like, I haven't done a video on this one yet because the meta was just something we've already had before and I hadn't really had a chance to really review it. But now, since we've had so much new additions and changes in this meta, I figured, why not? Let's just hit it and go and see what we can come up with here. So on this first page here, I've got some of the meta mainstays and some stuff that's highly ranked on PvPoke, stuff that you're going to see, right? So Trevenant and Venusaur both fill the role of being an anti-fighting grass type with poison, and the thing with Trevenant is it cores very well, obviously, with the Walrein. Still loses to Walrein despite the nerf because the Icicle Spears come out faster than the... I guess they don't come out faster, but I think the super effective damage, I think the point is that Walrein can tank one Seed Bomb, whereas the Trevenant can't really tank any. So Trevenant is going to be really good against a lot of Pokemon in this cup. It's going to be a thing that you're going to see everywhere. You know it from previous times we've had this meta. Not too much to go over here. Venusaur similarly has been in the meta ever since Ultra Premier Classic has been a thing. Cores very well with a lot of the same things that that Trevenant does, just because of the fact they fill a similar role with grass and anti-fighting subtypings, and having the poison damage obviously is going to be better against some things, whereas having the ghost damage is good against some things that are like the steel types and the fighters. There's not a whole lot of normal types in this cup. There's really just Snorlax and maybe like a non-XL Miltank. So there's really not a whole lot that Trevenant needs to be scared of. There's a few dark types roaming around. Obstagoon and Alolan, which is also on this page. Swampert and Walrein are probably going to be the two most common water types. Walrein obviously still got that nerf, but it's still very good. It's still going to be able to outpace a lot of things to those Icicle Spears. Icicle Spear does a lot of damage in its own right. So you can't sleep on Walrein. It's going to be part of the meta, so just be ready for it. And Swampert, it's everywhere in every meta, so it's always going to be there. Don't count it out ever. It's there forever. Nidoqueen, if you want to run Nidoqueen in the Ultra League Premier Cup Classic, you will need a Hundo or near it with a Best Buddy to get near that 2,500 mark with no XL candy. Lapras can be built as a non-XL, and honestly, if you're going to build a Lapras for Ultra League, I think you probably should just go non-XL so that you can have it for two different leagues. Snorlax is a generic safe swap normal type. It does very well in a lure out the fighter type or be an anti-ghost. It works very well in both regards. And then Alolan Muck, we all know these guys, right? I'm not going to spend too much time going through the stuff that we all know everything about already because they've been here for so long. Alolan Muck has the ability to run the Poison Jab with the Acid Spray and Dark Pulse, or you can run it with a Snarl variant. I think you're probably better off running it with the Poison Jab and Acid Spray. It just makes it a better consistent Pokemon, whereas the Dark Pulse and Sludge Wave with Snarl is going to be a little bit more bait dependent, but it does have the energy gains, which is really nice. It depends on what way you want to go. Also really depends on the kind of stuff that you're going to see in your particular sub-meta of the ELO, so we can take a look at the next page here, which is going to get a little bit more interesting because this is all the dragons. And I know Empoleon's not a dragon, but it cores really well with the dragons, which is why I slipped it on here because I didn't have room on the last page, so bite me. But so Dragonair just got superpower, that huge upgrade to its moveset, allowing it to fight back against the steel types that it used to have so much trouble with. And it doesn't have Hurricane anymore, so it doesn't have a nuke move against things like Togekiss counter swaps. But having superpower makes it a really strong lead, could make it also a very potent shield grabber, safe switch if your opponent decides they want to bring in a steel type like Empoleon or something else that really, doesn't want to eat a superpower. It's a very strong Pokemon, and I'm going to be looking to probably run one myself. And then Kingdra is a tried and true Pokemon in the Ultra League Premier Classic. Kind of shied away from being used when Walrein was introduced, but now that Walrein is a little bit less spammy, it might have a little bit more play because the Dragon Breath Octazooka Outrage combination on Kingdra is super, super strong with that coin flip chance of double debuffing the opponent's attack with Octazooka. That could be a very good safe switch Pokemon. Charizard, we all know and love Charizard. You can't discount the Charizard. It's got access to like 4 different good fast moves. You got Fire Spin, you got Ember if you want to spin an Elite TM, Wing Attack is an Elite TM, and then also you could have Dragon Breath on it as well if you did. Don't need to spin an Elite TM if you evolved one during the Community Day events, but otherwise you got to spend an Elite TM if you want to get a new one. Gyarados. Love Gyarados. If you have a Shadow Gyarados, by the way. Shadow Gyarados with Dragon Tail is disgustingly strong. You will have to Elite TM on Dragon Tail, so I would only do it if you have like a super high ranked one or super good one. And then Dragon Breath damage from it is also very, very potent. Wouldn't really want to use the Waterfall though, because it's slower to the charge moves, and Gyarados already has a really consistent move in Aqua Tail for water damage, so definitely going with a dragon type fast move there to be able to just have more consistent damage and use it as a more of an anti-dragon. Like it counters all the dragon types because it isn't a dragon type itself. So speaking of dragons though, we've got Goodra and Drudagon on the bottom here. These are actually some newer additions. Goodra wasn't super popular because it wasn't very accessible last time we had Ultra League Premier Cup Classic a couple seasons ago, but Goodra has wins because it is a very consistent, somewhat spammy moveset. Muddy Water gets a potential debuff. Power Whip is a really consistent, strong grass type move. Able to really hit back against things like Wall Rain, but I mean, obviously there are things that wall its moveset or just out damage it. So S-Cavalier resisting the hard hitting Power Whip and the Dragon Breath is able to beat it, and most steel types will probably do that as well. Wall Rain is going to be able to out damage it because the Icicle Spears and Ice Powder Snow damage is always super effective, so you're not going to get very far with a Goodra in that regards. Snorlax out bulks it and out damages it, and Trevenant hard walls the moveset aside from Dragon Breath, but I assume it probably wins the 2 shields because of how close that is to 500. You could probably win the 2 shields with against the Trevenant. But you have things like Nidoqueen, Charizard, Venusaur, Obstagoon, Swampert. Those are some solid wins, so look for Goodra to be an interesting pick in this meta. Drudagon is down here a little ways. Drudagon is one of the newer additions that we got. It was actually almost about a year ago, so it has been viable in previous metas, but it might see a little bit more. But it's got Dragon Tail, Dragon Claw, Night Slash, so a pretty spammy moveset. Has a fair amount of bulk and can beat some really interesting things. It does a lot of the same wins that Goodra does because of the fact that they're both dragon types and they're really good. Nidoqueen is a loss though. Obstagoon's a loss because it doesn't have any way to hit it for super effective damage, but still, Drudagon is like, it's a super consistent kind of Pokemon that does a lot of decent damage. I think you're going to be in a good place if you want to use one of those, and if you can successfully keep it away from some of these hard lost Pokemon. Obviously that's the name of the game, right? Anything that anything that isn't hard walled is usually okay, right? So Kommo-o though is definitely a new addition. We got that I think a couple seasons ago. Maybe it really wasn't accessible, so most people probably don't have it. You don't need to XL Kommo-o, and it has a really potent moveset. Dragon Tail is super consistent. Dragon Claw is super consistent in close combat. Allows it to hit things like Obstagoon, Snorlax, S-Cav, and you know, even Wall Rain, if you're able to get it through a shield or get a shield advantage on it. Kommo-o could be a really strong pick in this meta as well as another dragon. And then Empoleon, we all know Empoleon, right? Empoleon has that super consistent damage from Waterfall, has a really strong coverage move in Drill Peck to deal with the fighters and grass types that come in to counter it, and Hydro Cannon is just too good of a move. Empoleon has, I believe, fallen a little ways here, unless I'm just totally missing it. It's way up here somewhere. Where's Empoleon at? Where are you at, man? Don't tell me it's that far down. It can't be that far down. It's always good. Empoleon is number 137 in the rankings now, with what used to be one of the most common picks in the Ultra League Premier Cup Classic, and I think it still will be. Just because Wall Rain can beat it going Earthquake, I don't think that you should discount Empoleon. It's still a very strong Pokemon, very consistent damage, so look to that to pair with your dragons. I think that they're a very strong combination, can deal with each other's weaknesses very well. So next group here is going to be your list of fighters. This probably isn't everything, you know, things like Blaziken are in there. There's some other fighters that we could talk about, but I just kind of left it to the main core fighters here because you're really not going to see anything past this, honestly. So
no, thank you.
You're going to be able to get Surfetch'd in there. Surfetch'd is an excellent safe swap with a diverse moveset. It's not new. It's been around for a while. You probably have one built. So you know, it's Night Slash, Leaf Blade. It could be Brave Bird. You never know. So it's really essentially a good toolbox Pokemon to be able to hit whatever you need it to hit, or threaten shields if you build it to that Brave Bird. Machamp, as we all know, can be a shadow or a regular, and no matter what version, what flavor of Machamp you have, it is a very consistent fighting type, able to put out a lot of damage, and you're looking good, because that coverage it has between Rock Slide and Cross Chop is basically able to hit most of the meta except for Nidoqueen without much issue. Obviously, any poison and anti-fighting type is going to be able, so Sneasler, Nidoqueen, Toxicroak, those are really the only things that Machamp can't hit for at least neutral damage, and those are very few things in this meta. So Gallade, we all know Gallade, of course, very well with things like Empoleon and Magnezone. Very consistent damage with Confusion, makes a really good, safe swap because of Leaf Blade. We know Gallade, and you can run this Shadow as well. Toxicroak, another one that's been around for a while. Toxicroak has to be close to a hundo to be, at its max CP for Ultra League Premier Cup Classic, so if you got one, very strong Pokemon. Mud Bomb is able to help it deal with a lot of things like, the fire types, the poison types. It's a very consistent Pokemon with a very consistent moveset. It's not going to be going away anytime soon. Does very well. Escavalier, very similarly, has been around for a while. Has Drill Run to be able to hit back against a lot of the other steals and just really consistently deal a lot of fast move pressure against even things like fire types, electric types that come in against it. So those are going to be good as well. And Heracross, being the last fighter I have on this list here, is basically going to give it a similar role to Toxicroak. It's an anti-fighter with a strong nuke move, and you could either run Close Combat, you can run Earthquake, you can run Mega Horn, or you could also run it with a Rock Blast as the bait move, which makes it a really strong anti-fighter as well. So it has a chance to do a ton of damage to a Charizard that swaps in against it, for example, which normally would hard counter it based on its typing. Next up, we've got some just like miscellaneous Pokemon that I think do really well in this meta that I didn't really have a way to fit into any other pages, and I only give myself so many pages, so there's a lot more Pokemon than I can fit on these little guides here, and I don't really feel like setting up a whole new page because it's very time consuming if I'm being honest. So Crobat, Togekiss, very strong anti-fighter picks. Crobat obviously has the Poison Fang, gives a very consistent moveset. Very good in this meta if you can get it to avoid steel types, ice types, and things that just kind of wall it. Speaking of anti-fighters as well, you've got Sylveon as another Charmer option. There's a few Charmer options, but I think that the consistent ones and the good ones here are Togekiss and Sylveon. Magnezone is one of the strongest electric types in the meta, aside from Ampharos, which unfortunately, once again, I didn't have really any room for Ampharos, even though I really like it. Ampharos and Magnezone fill a very similar role in that they can boom things with their Wild Charge from Magnezone, Focus Blast or Dragon Pulse from Ampharos, and they both have some spammy movesets in that they can bait with Mirror Shot, or if you want some consistency from the Ampharos, it has Thunder Punch for some stab bait damage. I think either way you go, you have a really strong electric type, and I like them both a lot. Poliwrath is able to core break a few things here. Having that water fighting typing allows it to really deal a good amount of damage to things like Walrein. Also gives it play against things like Obstagoon and other water types. Even it can fight against something like Magnezone that comes in against it as well. It's a very good core breaker kind of Pokemon, and it's not obviously going to be a very strong, super common thing. But if you're finding a lot of teams that you're playing against that maybe they're running something like lots of goons and Alolan Mucks and things like that, could be another good solid time to start breaking out your Poliwrath. Now, Poliwrath can be XL'd, but honestly, if you're going to build a Poliwrath, I would just do a level 40 Poliwrath, because the XL amount that it gains really isn't that much to really warrant having one in XL range. Gengar has always been very consistent, good ghost type, super solid anti-fighter Pokemon, is going to be able to bait really well with that Shadow Punch, and it can have any number of nuke moves. You can get Shadow Ball, Sludge Bomb, Focus Blast. There's many tools out there for a Gengar to really dominate with. And it's a very attack-weighted Pokemon, so any potential baits have to be respected, so it's really good at getting shields as well. Obstagoon, we know Obstagoon from the Ultra League Open and almost every other meta that it's in, is a very, very strong anti-ghost, very good at fighting, very good as a fighter without having a fighting subtyping, but also loses hard to other fighters. So you kind of just got to, play your team with that one. Use Goon maybe as a closer now with Obstruct. I think is very strong. It's always been a very strong Pokemon, but having Obstruct just makes it that much more dominant in the closing position. And Samurott, although it's ranked low, Samurott's very spammy, gets the Hydro Cannons very, very quickly, and has Mega Horns, so it's going to be able to deal with a lot of interesting things in the meta. Even able to hit back against the counter swap Trevenant. You know, those Hydro Cannons do hurt, and they're able to do a lot of damage against a bunch of other stuff. It's a very versatile, very, you know, very spammy Pokemon that can do a lot of things. So last page of the picks of this meta, we are going to have some of the new additions. Right now, this is obviously not everything, but some of the Pokemon that have come into this meta. Sneasler, if you have one, you can get this without breaking the TOS if it's an Ultra League. It doesn't need to be XL'd, I don't think. Sneasler fills a very similar role to Toxicroak, except that it can hit back very well against Ghost types. So Sneasler here, ranked at number 9, has Close Combat and X-Scissor in its moveset. Could run Aerial Ace if you wanted to. Stats, very Glass Cannon. Doesn't really have any bulk to it, so it's going to need to be something he saves shields for most often. But having this move set of Close Combat and X-Scissor is going to allow it to pick up things like it dominates Wall Rain, can destroy an Escavalier, Obstagoon, even though it's got Shadow Claw. All it needs to do is land a Close Combat, which resisting almost the entire move set of Obstagoon kind of helps it do that really well. You know, able to beat things like Venusaur and even Swampert. If it lands a Close Combat, almost anything that doesn't fully resist it, it's going to probably one-shot it. If you remember back when we did the Fighting Cup, I was running a Sneasler in Great League because, like I said, I got one from my daughter, and it was a very nice thing to have to be able to get from her. The 4-year-old, not this one. It was able to one-shot almost the entire cup between Aerial Acing and Close Combat. The attack stat on this thing is just so monstrous that it's able to do that. Obviously, it's going to lose to things like Gallade. Nidoqueen, you know, does beat it if it lands the Earth Power. Trevenant kind of really just walls it. You could go with the X-Scissors, but they're only neutral, and if Trevenant farms down or hits you with any charge move, it's over. Charizard kind of is just a better matchup. You can't really do much damage to it because it's walling your moveset. Dragonite, same deal. So Overquill was another addition that we've had. It functions very similarly to a Drapion in that it can use Poison Sting, but also it has Poison Jab for that very consistent damage. So Overquill here is number 35 in the meta, and it's able to pick up wins against obviously the Charmers, being a poison type with Poison Jab. Able to beat Gallade because of the consistent moveset, resisting Confusion, Leaf Blade, and only taking neutral from a close combat. Venusaur basically walls due to the poison typing. Trevenant walls due to the dark and poison typing, and Snorlax resists the lick damage. It's going to be able to pump out more damage than the Snorlax probably could, especially if it gets a bait with the Aqua Tail. And this one is running Aqua Tail Shadow Ball, so against Snorlax, that means it can win just going straight Aqua Tail, which is crazy. You're going to lose to things, though, that have ground moves. Typically, Swampert, Walrein, Nidoqueen are going to be able to land those big moves and take you out before you can take them out. Obstagoon is just bulky and has the ability to hit the obstruct, so the counter damage plus the Night Slash or the cross chop probably just overtakes it. And Charizard is just probably going to be able to outbulk it, even though those Aqua Tails will hit for super effective damage. I imagine this just comes down to a one shield scenario where you get a bait with the Dragon Claw and they land the Blast Burn. That's probably all it is. So Overquill could probably be really consistent against something like Charizard. Now Beware is the next one here on this list. Beware at number 43, Superpower Stomp. We're not running Payback on this because there's not as many ghost types that you need to worry about, because with Shadow Claw and normal typing, it already functions really well as an anti-ghost. So it loses against most of the things that fighters lose against, wins against ghost types, beats Snorlax because of that superpower, Walrein as well. Trevenant doesn't really take too kindly to the Shadow Claw damage while resisting, while it resists all that Shadow Claws. And then and Beware is just, it's a super attack-weighted Pokemon. It's going to be able to do a lot of damage. Miltank, if you have a non-XL Miltank, which basically you have to have like Raid IVs, and I think it has to be almost a hundo, to be honest. I don't think it can hit 2500 without it. Yeah, I guess it's 2354. So this thing is super tanky. It's not going to really be something that, you know, you're going to see much of, because most people are probably going to want to build the XL Miltank, but it's there to be aware of. I'm not really going to put much stock in it, but it is running Body Slam, Ice Beam with Tackle. Not running Rollout in this meta that you could. Ice Beam is there to help it against things like Trevenant. Otherwise, Body Slam is just super, super strong with Miltank as the stab damage. Golisopod was another new addition to the meta here. And coming at number 93, still has terrible charge moves, but the Shadow Claw damage does help it have some consistent fast move damage. And X-Scissor and Aerial Ace are decent coverage moves. Not really going to help it against, you know, things that hard wall it. It doesn't really have any way to deal with steel types or anything like that nature. But being able to hit X-Scissor, Aerial Ace, just being able to also hard wall. It does actually beat Walrein in this meta, which is now nice. That with the Shadow Claw edition, it can consistently beat Walrein. And then the ability to spam out X-Scissors and Aerial Aces every like 4 or 5 Shadow Claws does help it beat some of these other Pokemon, like Trevenant as well. Obstagoon, if it just gets the X Scissors off, it does quite a bit of damage with those. However, you're still going to end up losing to things that just have good consistent damage output, like Nidoqueen, S-Cavaliers, because it walls the move set for the most part. Aerial Ace is just a bad move anyway. Sylveon is going to be able to just out damage this thing, and Machamp is probably, even though it resists fighting type, it's probably landing that Rock Slide in order to take it out. So we have Aurorus is another new addition to this meta. Aurorus is not going to be an amazing pick by any means. It still loses to most of the fighters in the waters. But I think it's really interesting as a pick where if you're seeing, you know, a lot of Dragonites, a lot of Charizards, a lot of Crobats, and Sylveons, like, well, even Sylveon, that's not exactly an amazing matchup, but you're going to be able to core break some interesting things with the Rock and Ice moveset here. You could also run Thunderbolt if you want. You might be having a better chance against something. Yes, baby, Maggie is asleep. She is sleeping. But Aurorus has a pretty decent amount of bulk, so it could also, as long as Walrein doesn't land the Earthquake too, it has a pretty good matchup against Walrein as well. Hydreigon is an interesting pick here that I like. It's not going to be amazing by any means, but Brutal Swing and Dragon Pulse gives it a really consistent damage output. As long as you can keep it away from a Charmer or stuff that just resists the moveset or does super effective damage back, like Walrein, S-Cavalier. Swampert is Swampert. It always wins against everything because it's Swampert. Nidoqueen is going to be able to out-damage it. Machamp doing super effective, but look at this. It beats Dragonite. It can beat even Charizard, Trevenant, Venusaur, Gallade. Those are some really interesting wins, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some Hydreigons, especially with the people running in Celestial Cup. You might see some of those. And then Golem, a lone Golem with the rollout is number 143, but it's still interesting in that it can deal with a very wide amount of things in the meta if it lands one of those nuke moves. Crobat, destroyed. Charizard, destroyed. Walrein, destroyed. S-Cavalier, actually, if it tanks a Wild Charge, it's destroyed. Otherwise, your S-Cavalier pretty much has the 2-shield through this matchup. Now, obviously, it gets walled by Grass types almost completely, because if it's running Rock Blast, it doesn't really have a way to do any consistent rock damage, because Rollout doesn't have much fast move pressure at all. So I almost would wonder if you want to just run Stone Edge Wild Charge and just go with the heavy-hitting moveset. But either way, it's going to do a good job at pulling shields. It's a sticker, baby. You're going to be able to pull shields off with this thing, and it's not a bad pick at all, I think. So last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some cores and wrap this up here. So what we've got in the cores department, right? So the first one's Empoleon Double Dragon. Very strong team, introduced several seasons, go back in like season 6. And it's always been a very good team other than that. After Walrein came in, it did kind of start to see a lot less use because Walrein was able to core break by going straight Earthquake against Empoleon. But I still think that even with this nerf here, I think that Walrein is still going to be okay against this team, but it has a lot more things to fear now because Dragonite has superpower. It could one-shot a Walrein at almost any given time. Togekiss and Lapras form a really strong core as well. Lapras is going to be able to have that consistent damage, be able to deal with a lot of the fire types and the poison types, you know, like Nidoqueen, and most of the things that beat Lapras, like fighters, like I wouldn't say rock types. There's not really a whole lot of rock types, but most of the things that these two can't handle by themselves, the other does for them. So, like, those are going to be a very strong, consistent, fast move pressure sort of team. On the left, on the bottom here, we've got the Dark Poison core, which is, you know, for this case, it could be, you know, Nidoqueen Goon, could be Goon Crobat, could be Alolan Muck and Goon. It could be any number of Poison Dark types. They're all very strong with each other because they can resist the fighting type moves that those Dark types are weak to in the Poison typing, and then the Confusion, the Psychic type damage that would normally be a problem for Crobat, Steel typing stuff. You know, that's all. It's just a very good core in general. And then the final one I've got on the bottom right here is the team that I took the Legend last time we had Ultra League Premier Cup Classic. That was the Walrein Double Fighter team. It was Gallade on the safe swap and Toxicroak on the closer. Very, very strong, consistent team. A lot of people don't realize that their Walrein does straight lose to a Gallade, so hopefully they figured that out by now. But very, very strong team. I can highly recommend it. As, you know, obviously it took me to Legend a couple seasons ago, so I'm definitely down to run it again. And then in the middle, you've got your generic safe swaps, some really strong stuff. So Snorlax, we all know, but baits out those fighters. Very consistent moveset. Very strong, threatening moveset with Superpower and Body Slam. Doesn't even, you know, there's Scrafty's not here to hard wall it, and that was really one of its hardest counters. So I think you're going to be a good place with Snorlax in this meta. It's very strong. Gyarados is going to be able to bait out potential anti-water answers. Has very consistent dragon typing moveset, and also just the moves on it, Crunch and Aqua Tail, come out very quickly. So you definitely have to be aware of how strong Gyarados can be. Uh-oh. You okay, dude?
Up a basket over his head.
Oh, I know, and everybody on YouTube can see it. Like, he's silly, dude.
No.
You're a goof. All right. Anyway, real quick, we'll wrap this up here. We talked about Surfetched already. Got a very, very toolboxy kind of moveset. Makes the opponent afraid of anything you could possibly be running. Could be Brave Bird. Could be even Close Combat. I think I learned Close Combat. Night Slash and Leaf Blade. All those moves need to be respected on different moves, different matchups. So Muck being the last safe swap here. It's very consistent because it's got Poison Jab. And remember, notice the term I'm using a lot is consistent. Consistent Pokemon are good. You don't want to be in a spot where you have to rely on things like a bait, or, you know, that's the only way you win a matchup sometimes, but like, you don't want to rely on that, right? So having consistent Pokemon is always going to be helpful. Allows you to make sure you're doing constant damage and pressure. Acid Spray can allow Muck to win a lot of 2-shield scenarios, and also give it in a situation where even a resisted Dark Pulse would do a ton of damage, like against Obstagoon, for example. You hit him with an Acid Spray, and then if you land a Dark Pulse afterwards, that's going to do a ton of damage. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. This meta-analysis brought to you by Sleeping Baby. She's so adorable. So, good luck in your Ultra League Premier Cup Classic next week. Gonna be looking to do a bunch of this myself. I love this meta so much. So, if you want to get in on any of the secret teams that I may have cooking up, which I'm sure you have done plenty, as well as just some, you know, a good community to roll with and be, you know, just an active, consistently awesome community in my Patreon Discord, hit up that video, or not the video, the link in the description. And if you'd like to get some coaching, you're interested in trying to improve yourself at GBL or Sylph or whatever else you may be looking to improve on in PvP and Pokemon Go, the Metafy link in the description will take you to that page. So please, please, please consider it if you're looking into anything like that. And that is going to do it for me for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.